Good day. Welcome to Officer.com. We are here with Duane Buckner, otherwise known as Buck. He's the Director of Training for Aimpoint and a 25-year veteran of the Coast Guard, having served with Search and Rescue and DSF. We're going to talk about the duty RDS that Aimpoint has, the P2 that Aimpoint has, and we have some other topics we're going to discuss along the way. How you doing this morning, Buck?
Good, man. Very good. Very good. Better when this coffee is in me.
It is amazing how much coffee can help. Do you have the IV drip set up yet?
I do. Yes, I do. Yeah. I have the patch.
Yeah, that's even better. So look, two things we're here to talk about. Lisa, the rifle RDS, specifically designed for law enforcement, as I understand it, and then the P2. So if you can, give me a little bit of an overview of both.
Okay. All right. We'll start with the duty RDS. Yeah. So, I think everybody or probably anybody listening to this is familiar with Aimpoint to some extent or another. The Aimpoint optics have been on rifles in almost every duty sense for a long time, for decades. They are robust, and I could go on. It's part of my job to go on about that kind of thing. But so what we did was went back to the drawing board and completely redesigned the red dot sight specific to really American law enforcement. And what we've done is we've pioneered a few different things with the housing. We've made it available to American law enforcement budget constraints. So what you're getting is an Aimpoint optic, tough as nails, fail proof, and all that stuff that American law enforcement officers can use given the challenging budget environment they find themselves in. The glass on the thing is magnificent. I got a funny story. I was in Sweden, and this kid, they all look like kids because Swedes don't age, came up to me, tapped me on the shoulder and asked me, he's an engineer, asked me, how important is the glass in these optics? I was like, oh, sit down, kiddo, let's talk. But yeah, they did a fantastic job, a magnificent job. The thing is, it's very, very good. And I'm specifically proud of it because of who it's for, kind of what it's designed for. And we're fielding it to those folks, which is great.
So everything you just said, does that apply to the rifle RDS as well as P2 for the handguns? Yeah,
so the rifle, no, that's the rifle RDS, or the duty RDS. The P2 is it's the second in the series of pistol mounted optics, kind of this, generational movement down the line. So in 2018, I think it was 2018, Aimpoint introduced the first enclosed pistol optic. And that was the P1, the Acro P-1. I guess it's 2020 now. We came up with a P2, which is the newest iteration in that line. So it is, it's got a different battery. It's got a 2032 battery in it where you can buy at the convenience store. And it is kind of endowed with all of the things I talked about with, the rifle optics. It is just tough as anything else Aimpoint makes. It's absolutely, man, I've abused the thing. I'm not now, so I don't have my own YouTube channel, so I don't have a vested interest in breaking things, on camera. But I have put the thing through pretty rough use. I've had one since, pre-production, or had many since pre-production. Genuine 5-year battery life on the thing out of that little 2032 battery, which is amazing to me. And I just can't break them. I'm not trying to break them,
But it's built to be used like every cop and soldier is going to use it, which means it's an optic first and a hammer second.
Absolutely. And a wrench in a pinch.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Yeah, they're extremely tough. And when we start talking about training, if we get to that, I'll tell you kind of my philosophy as to why we build them that way. But yeah, man, it's extremely, it's got some very kind of, when I say esoteric, I don't mean mildly used. I mean esoteric to the P2. It's got some benefits that I just don't think you'll find on the market anywhere else at this point. Anyway, I mean, I think graduations of the market will lead us to that. But as of right now, the P2 kind of stands alone, in my opinion. Of course,
I've got several questions for you about training, but let me ask you this: why? So some other manufacturers in the market, when you look through their RMR, you look through the red dot, you've got a bunch of information in there.
Too much.
Why is a simple red dot so effective?
Man, you don't know what you just asked and who you asked.
Remember that we have a time limit. But seriously, look, and I'm a firm believer, like we discussed earlier. I've been a cop almost 40 years, count my military time as an MP. And I will tell you that 90% of the people I met were simple people. And it's not an insult, but they were very basic, black and white, right and wrong. Give me the tool, show me how to use it, get out of my way, let me use it.
Right.
So why is that simple red dot so effective in the law enforcement world?
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. It's a great lead in. You said, you've met a lot of people that are simple. Well, the truth of the matter is we're all very, very simple. And I don't mean that in the kind of vernacular sense of the word. What I mean is when you're falling out of the airplane, living through the avalanche, or holding your breath in deep water, you all become very, very simple. And it's not a play on words. It's your limbic system does that. We all process at about 60 bits per second. That's a pretty fixed human processing speed. When we're under stress, based on Hicks law or Hick-Hyman law, our ability to process more and more becomes more and more challenged. So right. What happens is we have a parabolic problem. So, if it takes 30 seconds for me to process between 1 and 2, it's going to take me 60 seconds between 3 and 4, and 120 seconds between 4 and 5, and so on and so forth. So understanding that, our system tells us, commands us to remove a lot of that prefrontal cortex consideration or thinking, or creative thinking, because it understands when the tiger comes out of the grass, I can't have that parabolic problem.
Right.
So when you lift a rifle or present a pistol and there's too much information in there, you're doing two things. One is you're problem solving at the gun. Gunfights aren't solved at the gun. Gunfights are solved at the problem. And two, you are giving your brain a lot more work than biologically it wants. Physiologically, it's not designed for that. We love to say our limbic system makes us more focused. It does not make us more focused. It makes us much more simple, because it has to. If it makes us more focused, then we extract more options out of the world, and that doesn't make any sense.
I think the people that say it makes us more focused are just trying to be more polite than two old veterans care to be.
That's exactly.
Yeah. Sorry if you're offended because I called you simple. Get over yourself, right?
Because I'm the very definition of simple. So I get this a lot in classes, particularly law enforcement classes. They'll say it makes me more focused, and I know that because when I crashed last, because cops crash cars, there was a piece of glass kind of floating through the ether, and I could really see it moving. I said, well, here's what's happening, man. The glass went like this, and your ability to process information went like this. You are becoming more simple, and it's a very good thing. It's kept us on the planet for a very long time. All that to say that when you begin to negotiate with that pistol to develop an aiming solution, because that's what you're doing, you don't need complex problem solving. You don't need creative problem solving. You need it as simple as you can possibly get, which is why officer-involved shootings always report, I never even saw my front sight. And of course you did, because you're spatially negotiating, and you can't do that under deep stress. Most people can't.
Yep.
You're psychopath.
I can tell you point blank, never saw that front sight.
Yep, absolutely right. Yep.
Saw the bad guy.
Yeah. Of course you did.
So and bearing in mind we're about halfway through our allotted amount of time here.
I knew that.
You and I need to have about an hour conversation about training philosophy recorded for perpetuity. I'm a brand new red dot shooter. I'd never had a red dot on a gun before. But thanks to age and this thing called presbyopia, that front sight gets hard to focus.
Yes, it does.
So I recently had picked up a red dot, and I was looking around and trying to figure out all the right ways to pick up that red dot fast as possible, not having had a class. So number one, I didn't realize I was doing something wrong focusing on the red dot rather than the target.
Yeah.
And number two, my simplest solution was still putting the gun up into my line of sight, in my line of vision, and looking for both my sights, because my red dot was zeroed to sit on top of my front sight. So if I got my sights, I got my red dot. Yeah. It was a quick, easy solution for me, but I suspect there's a better way. So as it relates to the pistols, fastest way to find that red dot and then transitioning to iron sights. What are the challenges and answers?
Okay, so I'll start with the answer. As you said, and I hear this all the time, I hear people teaching this, believe it or not, find your front sight. Or, find your sights and you'll find your red dot. And I generally, my answer to that is, if you find your sights, shoot the gun, because you've already done all the work, but I reflect the question to them. If, a tool that asks you to do more work is not a tool. That line between implement and impediment is very, very thin. So what we have to do is develop a process that process being a neutral presentation. And that neutral presentation is just presenting the dot to your eye, because that's a reduction of work, right? And it's not spatially negotiating, because for us, for humans, especially under stress, spatial negotiation is very, very hard. I've got a lot of drills that'll show that to you. But yeah, so we have to have a neutral presentation, and that's largely support hand pressure on the gun and just driving it down that line of sight. And what you're looking for is that emphatic signal, that red dot that says, hey, I can shoot the gun. Because as soon as the red dot is, insinuated on the target, it's not getting any better, shoot the gun. So it's got to be a neutral presentation. The way that what was the other question? How do we get there?
Well, but transitioning from red dot to iron sights, because obviously, like you just explained, we don't want to transition from iron sights to red dot. But if I've got that red dot sight on my gun and I pull it up and there is no red dot, or the red dot breaks, dies, get hit with a round, whatever, God forbid, I've got to go back to my iron sights. Right.
So transitions, it's much easier than most people think. I think we have this fear that we're going to lose the ripcord, that being the iron sights, we're going to lose that skill. And there's no evidence of that thus far for me. And I've taught, my gosh, man, I've taught a lot of people. Pistol mounted optics right now are all the rage, everybody's transitioning to them. So what I do when I'm transitioning people is I teach a kind of a super elevated presentation. So the gun lifted a little bit, not because it's a tactic, but because I want to take the red dot from you. I don't want you to see the red dot. What I'm conditioning you to do is look through the optic, because there's no information. If you super elevate the gun just a little bit, particularly with the Acro, because it's tall, you can still see your target and not see the red dot. And what I'm just conditioning you to do is look through that optic at your sight, because that's really what we want to do is regain target focus, because we're all born with target focus, and regain that target focus. And then at the same time or simultaneously work on that neutral presentation. So what you really get when we finally start shooting in the class and get on a dry fire is you have a neutral presentation and you're conditioned to look down range. And what you see is a 12 o'clock drop of that dot coming right in, and hey, I can shoot the gun. And that is what's most important about that, is it uses the tool for what it's designed. It's a neutral presentation, and all of your decision making, all of your thinking is downrange, where the problem is, not where the gun is. Because for the most part, especially with irons, we are teaching people to be electricians that think about the screwdriver. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's, and there's, again, I have seen no skill drop, no skill loss in people shooting irons that shoot red dots, because you're not replacing a skill with the skill, you're making a skill easier.
So we're going to run out of time here shortly, and I have two questions I really want to ask you. So I'm going to ask them. I'm going to let you pick which one you answer.
All right.
Right. One is your top 2 training tips.
Okay.
That's one question. Or what is your training philosophy? So pick whichever one of those you can answer the briefest, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go with the first, the top 2 training tips. So number 1 is go slow. It is an infection in our industry that everyone feels like they have to go fast. What happens is you learn all of the things that are making you move faster than you're able to process. That's what you're learning. I always ask myself, what's to learn? What's to teach? When you go too fast early, speed needs to be organic. So the way that you get to speed, the way you get to organic speed, is to go slow, because your body will reward you with myelin. It'll myelate those nerve axons. It'll reward you with that, and speed will come. And speed will come in a way that doesn't have you shoot unknowns in the shoot house. Typically speaking, I see the guy go bang, 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 and he gets about here and goes, oh no, because this is an angular representation of his ability to process that information. He's running ahead of his headlights, or however you want to say it, whatever t-shirt slogan we can come up with.
Right.
And then 2, the second training philosophy, I think, or tip would be, tip is don't measure when you don't need to measure. When you're teaching, when you're learning, or when you're training, that's not a time to measure. Have these benchmarks, these moments where you're looking for those benchmarks, see if you've improved. But if you use a pro timer every single time you draw that gun, it's going to induce, moving faster than you can process.
I got to tell you, I love training timers if we're measuring for a reason.
Yes, absolutely.
We tested a camera that actually mounted onto a handgun, and it was magnetically activated coming out of the holster. but it took about a half a second delay. So we were actually trying to find out, could we outshoot the camera? And we had a couple of guys that could get out of the holster and get the first 2 shots off before the camera ever came on.
That's quick. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were. I mean, but you're starting out, holster completely unsecured, hand on the gun, just waiting to hear that beep, and then how fast can you get it out? And who cared if you hit the target?
Right.
Could you beat the camera? There's a time and a place for those measurements and scoring, but most of the time that's administrative. That's not life-saving skill set appropriate.
Right. Well, I think most people, and myself included, until I did the research, don't understand skill. Skill is completely 100% a biological process, and you cannot change it. You cannot change the way that we develop skill. You don't develop skill by measurement. We just don't. You develop skill by repetition, and that repetition has to be the first thing that you have to do is develop a process. You have to reduce what you're doing to a process so that you can accurately repeat it. And that repetition is best not done fast. It's funny, man.
Key term, accurate repetition.
Accurate representation. Because
way proper every time.
Yep. Your body is going to reward whatever it is that you're doing. It's agnostic to what you're doing. So if you're doing this wrong, you're going to get really good at doing it wrong. When somebody comes in to train with me and they go fast, I say, hey, congratulations, you've arrived. You're bad fast forever. Until you slow down, reduce it to a process, and allow your body to do what it's done for eons, you're never gonna.
It's in our pre-conversation, I mentioned to you Wyatt Earp, and somebody I'd met who never heard of him, and he is often credited with having said, "Fast is fine, but accurate is final."
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You can't say anything better than that, I don't think. Buck, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time for today. We might have to revisit this and do it again. So we did discuss the Aimpoint Duty RDS and the Acro P-2 for the handguns, right? And they can find more information on the website.
Aimpoint.us,
Aimpoint.us. All right, sir. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Absolutely. You too, brother.